A Mafia boss and his mute son were stranded at an airport when a single mom stepped in and spoke to the boy in perfect sign language. The boss froze. She was the only person who'd ever made his son smile. What he didn't know, she was the brilliant lawyer he desperately needed and the one person running from the same enemies hunting him. The private terminal at Newark Liberty was supposed to be quiet. That was the whole point of paying extra. No crowds, no delays, no complications. But Elias Voss stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows watching sheets of rain batter the tarmac, and his jaw tightened with every passing minute. Mr. Voss, his pilot approached, tablet in hand. "I'm sorry, but the storm system's expanded. We can't file a flight plan for at least 6 hours. Maybe longer." Elias didn't respond immediately. He built an empire on calculated risks and controlled environments. Weather was neither. Behind him, his 8-year-old son Theo sat cross-legged on a leather chair, noise-canceling headphones on, watching planes through the rain-streaked glass. 6 hours, Elias repeated flatly. "Could be morning, sir. They're redirecting us to the main terminal. Insurance liability. They can't keep the private lounge open overnight during severe weather advisories." The main terminal, where photographers lurked, where questions got asked, where a man like Elias Voss, whose legitimate shipping business barely concealed the darker tributaries of his wealth, became visible. "Fine." Elias turned toward Theo, softening his expression the way he always did when approaching his son. He tapped Theo's shoulder gently. Theo looked up, pulled off his headphones, and his small hands moved in quick, fluid motions.
"Hungry.
When do we go?" Elias's chest tightened. 5 years since the accident. 5 years since Theo had spoken a word aloud. The explosion that killed Theo's mother had stolen his voice, not physically, the doctor said, but psychologically. Trauma-induced mutism, they called it. Elias called it his greatest failure. He signed back clumsily. "Soon. We eat first." Theo's face scrunched in confusion at the awkward hand shapes. Elias had tried learning sign language, hired tutors, bought books, watched videos, but his hands were built for violence and deal-making, not the poetry of ASL. Most days, they managed with simple gestures and written notes. Theo signed again, faster. "What kind of food?" Elias caught maybe half of it. He pulled out his phone to type a response when Theo's stomach growled audibly. The boy's cheeks flushed pink. "Let's just get to the main terminal," Elias said aloud, more to himself than Theo. The main terminal was chaos. Travelers slumped against walls, children cried, and departure boards blinked red with cancellations. Elias kept one hand on Theo's shoulder, steering him through the crowd. His security detail, 2 men in dark suits trying and failing to look casual, flanked them at a distance. They found a quiet gate area near the international wing. Elias sat Theo down and went searching for food, but every restaurant had lines snaking 20 people deep. When he returned empty-handed, Theo's shoulders sagged. The boy signed something complex, too fast, too nuanced. "Slower," Elias said, crouching down. "I don't." Theo's hands moved again, frustrated tears welling in his eyes. "Why don't you understand me?" Elias felt the words like a blade. "I'm trying, Theo." He's asking if there's anything without peanuts. Elias's head snapped toward the voice. A woman stood 3 feet away, early 30s, with auburn hair pulled into a messy ponytail and tired eyes that held unexpected warmth. She wore jeans and a faded Columbia University sweatshirt. A boy about Theo's age stood beside her, clutching a worn backpack. "Excuse me?" Elias's tone was sharper than intended. The woman's hands moved in perfect, flowing ASL as she spoke aloud. "He has a peanut allergy. He wants to know if you can find something safe," she smiled at Theo. "Am I right?" Theo's eyes went wide. He nodded eagerly and signed back. "Yes. Nobody understands me except Dad, and he only knows a little bit." The woman laughed, a genuine sound that seemed out of place in the stressful terminal. "Well, your dad is trying really hard. I can tell," She glanced at Elias with an appraising look that made him straighten instinctively.
I'm Amber.
This is my son, Tyler. Tyler gave a small wave.
Theo waiver back.
Elias, he said, not offering his last name. Thank you for translating. No problem. Amber dug into her oversized purse and pulled out a granola bar, checking the label before handing it to Theo. This one's safe. Peanut-free facility. Theo took it reverently, signed thank you 3 times in rapid succession, and tore into the wrapper. Elias watched his son's face transform, the frustration melting into relief, into something like joy. When was the last time someone outside their tiny bubble had communicated with Theo so effortlessly? How much do I owe you? Elias reached for his wallet. Nothing. Amber's voice was firm. It's a granola bar, not a car payment. Still. Really? It's fine. She was already turning away, hand on Tyler's shoulder. Good luck with your flight. Elias should have let her go. Should have nodded politely and returned to the careful isolation that kept his son safe. But Theo's hand shot out, grabbing Amber's sleeve.
She stopped.
Theo signed quickly. Can Tyler sit with us? Please. Amber's expression shifted, something guarded sliding behind her eyes. Sweetie, they're busy.
Please.
I never meet anyone who signs. The words hung in the air between all of them. Elias saw the conflict on Amber's face, the way her gaze darted toward the terminal exits like she was calculating escape routes. Before anyone could respond, the departure board above them chimed. All remaining flights. Cancelled until morning. A collective groan rose from the terminal. Attention passengers, a voice crackled over the intercom. Due to severe weather, the airport will be providing overnight accommodations at the attached terminal hotel. Please proceed to the courtesy desks for room assignments. Elias closed his eyes briefly. An entire night in a public hotel with hundreds of stranded passengers. When he opened them, Amber was staring at the same departure board with an expression he recognized. Trapped. Looks like we're all stuck, he said quietly. She didn't meet his eyes.
Yeah.
Looks like it. Theo signed to Tyler. Do you know sign language too? Tyler shook his head but fingers spelled slowly. Only a little. My mom is teaching me. Theo's face lit up like Christmas morning. And Elias Voss, who'd built an empire on reading people, on knowing when to push and when to walk away, made a decision that would unravel everything. The hotel's going to be a zoo, he said to Amber. Let me make a call. I can get us, all of us, better rooms. Separate floors if you want.
Just.
Better than whatever they're assigning. Amber's eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? Because my son just smiled for the first time in 3 weeks. Elias's voice was rough with honesty he rarely showed. And because something tells me you understand what it's like to protect your kid from the world. For a long moment, Amber said nothing. Then Tyler tugged her hand and signed something simple. Hungry. She exhaled slowly. Separate floors. And I'm buying my own dinner.
Deal.
As they walked toward the hotel check-in, Elias didn't notice the man in the leather jacket watching them from beside a shuttered newsstand. Didn't see the phone raised, the photo snapped. Didn't realize that one act of kindness, one moment of letting his guard down, had just put everyone in that terminal on a collision course with the one thing he'd been running from. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one about to break. The terminal hotel was designed for efficiency, not comfort. Elias's phone call had worked, barely. The front desk manager, after hearing his name and seeing the black credit card, found 4 rooms instead of the cramped shared accommodations being offered to other stranded passengers. Floors 6 and 7, the manager said, sliding key cards across the counter. Best I can do tonight, Mr. Voss. Elias handed 2 keys to Amber. Room 604 and 605. Adjoining if you want the door unlocked between them. Amber took them without comment, but her hand trembled slightly. Elias noticed. He noticed everything, the way she positioned herself to keep Tyler on her left, away from the crowd. The way her eyes tracked every exit sign. The way she tucked her hair forward to hide more of her face, when they passed the hotel bar filled with delayed travelers. This wasn't just caution. This was fear. "We're on 7, Elias added. "Theo and I are in 712. "Perfect." Amber's smile was professional, distant. "Thank you for your help. We'll be fine from here." Theo's hand shot up, signing frantically. "Can we eat dinner together? Please, Dad?"
Please.
"Theo," Elias started. "I want to talk to someone who understands me. Just dinner."
Please.
Elias looked at his son's face, hopeful in a way that made his chest ache, and then at Amber, who was clearly searching for a polite refusal. "It's been a long day," she said carefully. "Tyler needs to rest." Tyler, unfortunately, chose that moment to announce loudly, "I'm starving, Mom. Can we eat at the restaurant? They have chicken fingers." Amber closed her eyes briefly. "Outnumbered." "1 hour," she said finally. "The cafe downstairs. Then we're done." Theo actually jumped, a rare, childish display of joy that made Elias's security detail exchange surprised glances. The hotel cafe was half full, with irritable travelers nursing overpriced drinks. Elias chose a corner booth, positioning himself to watch the entrance. Old habits. Theo and Tyler slid into one side, immediately absorbed in a shared tablet showing plain videos. Amber sat across from Elias, maintaining careful distance. "So," Elias said after they'd ordered, "Columbia University." Amber's guard went up instantly. "My sweatshirt's practically falling apart. Could have gotten it anywhere."
Could have.
"But didn't." Elias kept his tone neutral. "You signed too well for it to be just a hobby." "Deaf family member." "My brother." The lie came smoothly.
Too smoothly.
"He's overseas. Military." Elias didn't challenge it, but he knew deflection when he heard it. Instead, he watched Theo and Tyler. The boys had progressed from videos to Tyler attempting to fingerspell airplane types while Theo corrected his hand shapes, both giggling silently. "He doesn't laugh much," Elias said quietly. "Not since his mother died." Amber's expression softened marginally.
"I'm sorry."
5 years ago. Accident, the official story. Not the bomb meant for him that took his wife instead. Not the 3 months Theo spent in hospitals, physically healing, while something inside him locked away forever. He hasn't spoken since. "Trauma-induced selective mutism," Amber said, and Elias's eyes sharpened. "You know the clinical term?" She caught herself. "I read about it once. For work." "What kind of work?" The waitress arrived with their food, and Amber used the interruption to avoid answering. She busied herself cutting Tyler's chicken, adding ketchup, making sure his juice had a lid. Elias studied her, while she wasn't looking. Mid-30s, no wedding ring but a pale line where one used to be. Expensive watch, Tag Heuer, though she'd tried to hide it under her sleeve. Education and money in her background, but she was traveling with a ratty backpack and discount store clothes. Someone running. Someone hiding. "Amber," he said as she finally sat back, "what did you do before?" Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Why does it matter?" "Because I recognize you." The words came out before he'd fully processed them, but the moment he said it, pieces clicked into place. The intelligence in her eyes. The way she'd read that granola bar label with the speed of someone used to reviewing contracts. Finance sector. Legal maybe. The color drained from Amber's face. "You're Amber Chenoweth." Elias's voice was barely above a whisper. "You exposed the Helix tech embezzlement. Put their CEO in prison for 23 years. Amber stood abruptly. "Tyler, we're leaving."
"Mom. Now."
But Theo grabbed Tyler's hand, signing desperately. "Don't go. Please don't go." "I'm sorry," Amber said, pulling Tyler up. "We can't. I need your help." The words came out raw, unplanned. Elias never asked for help, never showed weakness. But watching the only person who'd made his son smile in weeks prepare to walk away, he broke his own rules. "Someone's sabotaging my business. Draining accounts. Setting up shell companies. I have financial experts, but they can't find the pattern. You could." Amber's laugh was bitter. You think I'd help she glanced at the boys and lowered her voice. I know what you are, Mr. Voss. I know exactly what you are. And I spent 3 years of my life putting people like you away. I'm not asking you to work for me. I'm asking you to. No, she gathered Tyler against her side. Stay away from us. Both of you. She walked away quickly, Tyler looking back with confused eyes at Theo, who'd started crying silently. Elias's phone buzzed. A text from his chief accountant. Another transfer. $23 million gone. They're inside the organization. He looked up to see Amber and Tyler disappearing into the elevator. His security chief materialized at his elbow. Sir, should we? No, Elias said tiredly. Let them go. But as he comforted Theo, explaining they'd find other friends, he couldn't shake the certainty that Amber Chenoweth was the only person who could untangle the web destroying everything he'd built. And she wanted nothing to do with him. Amber's hands shook as she swiped the key card for room 604. Tyler dragged his backpack inside, immediately going to the window to watch the rain. Mom, why did we have to leave? Theo was nice. It's complicated, baby. You always say that. Tyler's voice carried the particular whine of an exhausted 8-year-old. I'm hungry again. Amber wanted to scream that they'd just eaten, but she'd pulled him away before he'd finished half his chicken. Her paranoia had stolen another normal moment from her son. She looked at Tyler's thin frame, thinner than it should be. They'd been living in budget motels for 3 months, eating convenience store food, constantly moving. She'd told herself it was necessary, that her ex-husband Marcus would find them if they stayed anywhere too long, that keeping Tyler safe meant keeping him hidden. But looking at his disappointed face, she wondered if she was protecting him or just teaching him to be afraid. You know what? She forced brightness into her voice. Let's go back down. We'll get you a proper dinner. Tyler's face lit up. Can we sit with Theo again?
No, sweetheart.
Just us. His shoulders fell, but he nodded. The cafe was quieter now, the dinner rush over. Amber chose a table on the opposite side from where they'd sat before, far from the corner booth where Elias Voss had seen through her carefully constructed anonymity in approximately 90 seconds. Elias Voss. The name had triggered every alarm bell she'd spent 3 months trying to silence. She'd read about him during her days at Morrison and Fitch, the shipping magnate whose legitimate empire served as camouflage for money laundering, strategic acquisitions, and business rivals who mysteriously decided to retire. The kind of man who operated in shadows while smiling for charity galas. Exactly the kind of man she'd sworn never to help again. Can I get the mac and cheese? Tyler asked, studying the plastic menu. Of course. And vegetables. Mom. Broccoli or carrots? Choose. Tyler was negotiating for carrots when Amber felt eyes on her back. She turned to find Elias and Theo standing near their table. I'm sorry, Elias said, and he actually sounded it.
Theo insist.
He just wants to say goodnight properly. Theo stepped forward, his small hands moving in careful signs.
I'm sorry he cried.
I hope Tyler can still be my friend, even if just tonight. The earnestness in his expression cracked something in Amber's chest. She signed back without thinking. You didn't do anything wrong. Tyler would love to be your friend. Tyler was already sliding over, making room. You can sit with us. Mom, they can sit with us, right? 4 pairs of eyes looked at Amber. 2 pleading, 1 cautious, 1 unreadable. She should say no. Should protect the boundaries she'd spent months fortifying. 1 dinner, she heard herself say. That's all. Elias slid into the booth across from her while the boys returned to their absorbed conversation. Theo teaching Tyler the sign for different weather patterns, Tyler mangling the hand shapes in ways that made Theo giggle silently. Thank you, Elias said quietly. Don't, Amber's voice was sharp. This doesn't change anything. After tonight, we're done. Understood. They ordered in uncomfortable silence. Amber kept her eyes on Tyler, hyper-aware of Elias's presence across from her, The way he moved with controlled precision, the expensive watch that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. The danger that radiated from him like heat. "You're wrong about me," Elias said suddenly. "Am I?" "Partly." He picked up his water glass, studying it. "I've done things I'm not proud of. Built an empire on compromises and calculated violence. But I've never hurt anyone who didn't come for me first. And I've spent 5 years trying to go legitimate, cleaning up the business, cutting ties with the worst elements. That's why someone's trying to destroy me now." Amber forced herself to meet his eyes. "And you think I care about your redemption arc?"
No.
"I think you care about patterns." He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and slid it across the table. 3 months of financial statements. 17 accounts compromised. Money disappearing into shell corporations I didn't authorize. My people can't find the connection. Amber didn't want to look, didn't want to be pulled into his world. But her eyes betrayed her, dropping to the screen. Her brain, trained for years to spot financial irregularities, immediately started processing the numbers. She saw it in 30 seconds. "Cascade siphoning," she murmured. "Each transfer triggers another from a different account. Makes it look random, but..." She stopped herself. "I'm not doing this. You already saw something, Mr. Voss." "Elias." "I don't care what you call yourself." She shoved the phone back. "I'm not your lawyer. I'm not your analyst.
I'm nobody."
Amber Chenoweth is not nobody. She's the woman who unraveled 14 shell companies in 6 countries to prove that woman doesn't exist anymore. The words came out too loud. Nearby diners glanced over. Amber lowered her voice to a harsh whisper. "I gave up everything, my career, my home, my entire life, to keep my son safe. And you want me to dive back into exactly the kind of mess that destroyed me?" Elias leaned back, studying her. "Who are you hiding from?" "That's none of your business. If you're in danger, I can handle my own problems. Can you?" His voice was gentle now, which somehow made it worse. "Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who's been running so long she's forgotten what it's like to stand still." The accuracy of it stole Amber's breath. She stood abruptly. "Tyler, finish eating. We're going upstairs in 10 minutes." She walked to the cafe's entrance, needing air, needing space from Elias Voss's penetrating gaze. She didn't see Tyler lean over to Theo, signing clumsily. "Is your dad always this serious?" Theo signed back. "Only since Mom died. He's scared too, just like your mom." Tyler looked at his mother's rigid back, then at Elias's careful expression. "Maybe they should be scared together," Tyler signed. "It's less lonely." Theo smiled and signed back. "You're really smart." Behind them, Elias had seen the entire exchange. And for the first time in 5 years, he wondered if his son understood things he'd spent years trying to hide. Amber didn't sleep. She lay in the dark hotel room, listening to Tyler's steady breathing from the adjoining bed, watching shadows from passing headlights crawl across the ceiling. Her phone sat on the nightstand, dark and silent. She'd kept it off for the past 3 months except for necessary calls. Always brief, always careful. Marcus had connections, friends in tech companies who could trace signals, private investigators who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. But tonight, something gnawed at her. The financial patterns she'd glimpsed on Elias's phone had looked familiar. Too familiar. Against her better judgment, she powered on the phone. 3 voicemails. 7 texts. All from unknown numbers. Her stomach clenched as she opened the most recent text. "I know you're traveling with the boy. Chicago was a mistake. Don't make me come find you both." Chicago. They'd been in Chicago 2 weeks ago, just passing through. How did Marcus know? Her hands trembled as she deleted the message, but the damage was done. The careful distance she'd maintained had collapsed to nothing. He was tracking her somehow. She looked at Tyler's sleeping form and felt the familiar wave of guilt and terror. Every choice she made put him at risk, staying, running, accepting help, refusing it. There was no safe answer. 2 floors above, Elias stood at his window, phone pressed to his ear. "Say that again," he said quietly. His chief accountant, David Chun, sounded exhausted. Another withdrawal. For million this time, Elias. Whoever's doing this has root access to our systems. They're not hacking, they're authorized, which means it's someone in the inner circle. Has to be. I've narrowed it to maybe 6 people who could execute these transfers without triggering alerts. Elias's reflection in the rain-streaked glass looked older than his 42 years. "Send me the names." "Already did." "Check your encrypted email." Elias pulled up the message on his tablet. 6 names. 3 he'd known for over a decade. 2 were family friends. 1 was his own cousin. "There's something else," David said. "The shell companies receiving the funds? They're connected to Meridian Holdings." The name hit like a fist. "You're certain?" 90%. The ownership structure's hidden behind layers, but the transaction patterns match Meridian's usual methods. Meridian Holdings, the legitimate face of the largest criminal merger on the East Coast. 5 families combining resources under corporate camouflage. They'd approached Elias 8 months ago with an offer. Join or be eliminated. He'd refused. This was the elimination. "David, I need you to." A sound from Theo's adjoining room cut him off. Not loud, but wrong. A thump, then silence. "I'll call you back." Elias ended the call and moved swiftly to the connecting door, opening it quietly. Theo sat up in bed, eyes wide, pointing toward the main door. Someone was trying the handle. Elias's hand went to the weapon he kept holstered under his jacket, always within reach, even in a hotel. He crossed the room silently, positioned himself beside the door, and waited. The handle turned slowly. Professional work, someone with a keycard override or lockpicks. Then, from the floor below, a child's scream pierced the silence. "Tyler." Amber jolted awake to find Tyler sitting up in bed, screaming. But he wasn't having a nightmare. He was pointing at the door, which was slowly opening. She grabbed the lamp from the nightstand, ripping the cord from the wall, and positioned herself between Tyler and the door. A man stepped inside, ski mask, dark clothes, professional stance. Not Marcus. Marcus was cruel, but sloppy. This was someone else. "Wrong room," Amber said, her voice steadier than her hands. "Get out." The man paused, head tilting as if listening to something through an earpiece. Then he turned and ran. Amber heard footsteps pounding down the hallway, then a crash, then silence. She kept Tyler behind her, lamp raised, until heavy footsteps approached, and Elias appeared in her doorway, slightly out of breath. "Are you hurt?" he asked.
No.
"What? Who was that?" "I don't know." He tried Theo's room first, then ran when he heard Tyler scream. Elias looked past her at Tyler, who was crying quietly. "My security team is searching the floor, but he'll be gone by now." Amber's mind raced. "He wasn't here for you." "What?" "He tried your room first, because that's what normal people would do, target the wealthy businessman. But when he heard noise from down here, he came to my room instead." Her voice shook as the implications hit. "He was looking for me." "Why would?" "Because I looked at your files." Amber's laugh was slightly hysterical. "Because I've been hiding for 3 months, and the one night I let my guard down, the one night I talked to someone about financial crimes, someone tries to break into my room. That's not coincidence." Elias's expression darkened. "The timing doesn't make sense. No one knew you'd looked at my phone. Unless..." He pulled out his phone, fingers moving rapidly. "Unless someone's been watching me, waiting to see if I'd make contact with financial analysts. They could have identified you from the cafe. Or," Amber said quietly, "my ex-husband finally found me." "Your ex?" "Marcus Chenoweth, VP at Corvus Strategic Consulting." She watched Elias's face change. "You know them. They're Meridian's financial architects." Elias's voice was flat. "They design the corporate structures that hide criminal assets." The room seemed to tilt. Amber sat down hard on the bed. "That's impossible. Marcus is. He's abusive, he's controlling, but he's not connected to organized crime?" Are you sure? She wasn't. She'd left Marcus 18 months ago after the violence escalated, after he'd grabbed Tyler hard enough to leave bruises. She'd focused so hard on escaping his immediate threat that she'd never investigated his employer. They're coming after both of us, she whispered. Whoever broke in tonight. They weren't here for you, or me specifically. They're tying up loose ends. Elias crouched in front of her, his voice urgent. Amber, listen to me. You can't stay in this room tonight. Neither can Tyler. Come upstairs to our floor. My security team can watch both rooms. I don't need your protection. Yes, you do. His voice was firm, but not unkind. And whether you want to admit it or not, I need yours. Someone's systematically destroying everything I've built, and you saw the pattern in 30 seconds. Our problems just collided. We can face them separately and fail, or together and maybe survive. Tyler's small voice came from behind Amber.
Mom, I'm scared.
Can we stay with Theo? Amber closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to grab Tyler and disappear into the night. But Elias was right. Running had stopped working the moment she glanced at those financial statements. Just for tonight, she said finally. Tomorrow, I'm gone. Elias nodded, but they both knew it was a lie. Tomorrow, everything would change. Morning came with cruel brightness. Amber woke on the couch in Elias's suite, neck stiff, Tyler curled against her side. Across the room, Theo slept in his bed while Elias sat at the desk, already dressed, working on his laptop. He looked up when she stirred. Coffee's ready. Security swept the building. Whoever it was is long gone. Amber carefully extracted herself from Tyler's grip and moved to the window. The storm had passed, leaving crystal-clear skies. Below, the terminal buzzed with activity, passengers eager to continue their interrupted journeys. The flights are running again, she said. Yes. Then we're leaving, she turned to face him. Thank you for last night, but Tyler and I need to go. Elias closed his laptop slowly. Where? That's not your concern. Amber, his voice was patient. You have no car. Your ex-husband's employer is hunting you. And the people sabotaging my business now know you've seen my financial records. Where exactly do you think you can go that's safe? I've managed for 3 months. By running. By hiding. By keeping your son isolated in cheap motels and looking over your shoulder every second. Elias stood, his tone sharpening. That's not living. That's slow-motion surrender. The word struck too close to home. Amber's hands balled into fists. You don't know anything about my life. I know you're Amber Chenoweth. Harvard Law, top of your class. You joined Morrison and Fitch at 26 and made junior partner in 3 years, a firm record. You specialized in forensic accounting and corporate litigation. Elias had clearly done his homework overnight. 5 years ago, you exposed the Helix tech embezzlement scheme, $14 billion hidden across shell companies in 8 countries. The CEO got 23 years. You got death threats. Amber's jaw tightened. I handled them, until you married Marcus Chenoweth, a charming VP who seemed stable. But he wasn't, was he? The controls started small, checking your phone, questioning your clothes, isolating you from friends. Then it escalated. Stop, her voice cracked. You left him 18 months ago, and went underground. But Morrison and Fitch wouldn't rehire you. Too much liability after the Helix case. Other firms wouldn't touch you either, not with Marcus spreading rumors about mental instability. So you've been doing freelance document review for pennies, moving every few weeks, teaching yourself sign language from YouTube videos to give Tyler something stable to hold on to. Tears burned Amber's eyes. How do you? Because I pay attention to people who matter. And you matter because you're the only person who can find who's destroying me. Elias moved closer, his voice dropping. But more than that, you matter because you're exactly like me, someone trying to protect their child from a world that wants to hurt them. We're nothing alike, aren't we? You built a career, bringing down criminals. I became one. You married the wrong man. I married the right woman and got her killed. You're teaching Tyler sign language to connect with him. I can barely sign hello to my own son. His expression held raw pain. We're both terrified, Amber. The difference is I'm offering a way forward instead of another motel room. What are you offering? To make me complicit in whatever empire you've built. I'm offering protection, resources, and a chance to stop the same people hunting both of us. Elias pulled out his phone, showing her a new document. This is a consulting contract. $50,000 for 1 week of forensic analysis, finding who's sabotaging my accounts. Completely legal work. I'll provide security for you and Tyler, a safe location to work from, and legal documentation of everything you discover. Amber stared at the screen.
$50,000.
That was 6 months of safety. A deposit on an apartment. Stability for Tyler. And after the week, she asked quietly, you walk away. With the money, with my protection long enough to get settled somewhere new, and with documentation proving Marcus's employer is involved in criminal conspiracy, evidence you can use for a restraining order with teeth. It was too good. Too convenient. Why would you help me beyond the week? Because my son hasn't smiled in 5 years until he met yours. Because you made him feel understood for the first time since his mother died. Because Elias's voice roughened. Because maybe helping you is the first truly clean thing I've done in a decade. Behind them, Tyler stirred.
Mom.
Amber turned to find both boys awake now, watching them with worried eyes. Theo signed to his father. Is Amber leaving? I don't know yet. Elias signed back clumsily. Tyler looked at his mother. Are we running again? The question, so simple, so devastating, broke something in Amber's chest. She'd spent 18 months teaching Tyler that running was safety. But looking at his resigned expression, she realized she'd actually taught him that nowhere was safe. That connection was temporary. That people couldn't be trusted. If I do this, she said slowly, I need rules. I work independently. Your security keeps their distance. And the moment I sense this is more than financial analysis, I'm gone. Agreed. I need everything, bank statements, corporate filings, employee records, transaction logs. Complete transparency. You'll have it. And I need to know exactly who we're dealing with. Meridian Holdings, Corvus Strategic, all of it. Elias nodded. I'll tell you everything. Amber looked at Tyler, then at Theo's hopeful face, then back at Elias. She was probably making the worst decision of her life.
1 week, she said.
Then we're done. 1 week, Elias agreed. Neither of them believed it. Tyler signed to Theo. We get to stay. Theo's face transformed with joy. Yes. Want to see my plane collection? As the boys rushed to Theo's suitcase, chattering in broken sign language and excited gestures, Amber caught Elias's eye. I'm trusting you, she said quietly. Don't make me regret it. I'm trusting you with everything that could destroy me, he replied. We're even. But as Amber accepted the coffee he offered, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another text from an unknown number. Saw you with Voss. Big mistake, Amber. Huge. She deleted it without letting Elias see. Some dangers she wasn't ready to share yet. By midday, the airport terminal had transformed from chaos into organized urgency. The departure boards glowed green with on-time status, and travelers rushed toward their gates with renewed purpose. Elias had arranged for a later flight, 6 p.m. instead of the original morning departure. Gives you time to review the preliminary files, he told Amber over breakfast. And lets the boys spend a few hours together. Now they stood in the terminal's central hub, bags packed, security detail hovering at a careful distance. The plan was simple. Part ways at the gate, board different flights, and reconnect digitally once Elias had established secure communication channels. Professional.
Clean.
Safe. Then Theo saw the airport's newly reopened children's play area. His hands moved frantically. Please, Dad. Just 30 minutes. I never get to play with other kids. Elias hesitated. The play area was exposed, floor-to-ceiling glass walls facing the main terminal, surrounded by gates and crowds. Every protective instinct screamed no. But Theo's expression held such desperate hope that Elias felt his resolve crumble. 30 minutes, he sighed. Theo grabbed Tyler's hand and pulled him toward the play area before Amber could object. The boys kicked off their shoes and disappeared into the colorful maze of slides and climbing structures. Amber stood beside Elias at the observation railing, watching through the glass. He doesn't play with other kids often? Never. Too risky. Elias's voice was flat. I've kept him isolated since his mother died. Private tutors, controlled environments, no school. I told myself it was for his safety. But maybe I've been protecting him from living. They watched in silence as Theo and Tyler climbed to the top of a plane-shaped structure. Theo was signing something elaborate, probably explaining the aircraft model based on his wing gestures, while Tyler watched with rapt attention. He knows more about planes than most pilots, Elias said. Memorized specifications for 200 different models. It's his obsession. Tyler's obsessed with space, Amber offered. Can name every constellation visible from the northern hemisphere. Wants to be an astronaut. Does he know how dangerous that is? Amber smiled sadly. I haven't had the heart to tell him most dreams are dangerous. Elias glanced at her. Is that why you gave up yours? I gave up my career to keep my son alive. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? You were brilliant at forensic accounting. People still talk about the Helix case, how you traced money through cryptocurrency exchanges and phantom banks that didn't technically exist. You revolutionized how prosecutors handle digital asset concealment. Amber's expression hardened. You researched me thoroughly. I needed to know who I was trusting. Elias turned to face her fully. But I also needed to understand what I was asking you to sacrifice by coming back into this world. You're not asking me to come back. You're paying me for 1 week of work. Is that what you tell yourself? Before Amber could respond, Theo came running out of the play area, Tyler close behind. Theo's hands moved in rapid signs. Amber translated, without thinking. He says Tyler taught him a sign he didn't know. Tyler, show me. Tyler's hands moved carefully, forming shapes Amber had taught him during their long motel nights. When you're scared, you're not alone. I'm here. It was the sign she'd created specifically for Tyler after particularly bad nightmares about Marcus finding them. A private language between mother and son. And now Tyler had shared it with Theo. Theo signed it back to Tyler, then to his father, then to Amber. I'm here. You're not alone. Elias's expression cracked, just for a moment, before he composed himself. Thank you for teaching him that. I didn't teach him that for you, Amber said quietly. I taught him because he needed to know someone cared. Theo tugged Elias's sleeve and signed. Can Tyler visit us? At our real house. Please. Theo, that's... Please. I've never had a friend who understands me. Never. Please, Dad. Elias looked at Amber helplessly. They both knew the logistics were impossible. Different cities, different lives, security concerns, custody issues. But Tyler was signing to his mother. Can I? Please? I've never had a friend either. The words hit Amber like a physical blow. In 18 months of running, she'd never once heard Tyler complain about the isolation. He'd accepted their transient life with the adaptability of childhood, never questioning why he couldn't go to regular school or have playdates or celebrate birthdays with anyone but her. She'd convinced herself she was protecting him, but she'd really just been teaching him to be alone. Mom, Tyler's voice was small. Why are you crying? Amber wiped her eyes quickly. I'm not, baby. She looked at Elias, then at Theo's pleading face. Maybe we can figure something out. Elias pulled out his phone. Where were you planning to go after this? What city? I hadn't decided yet. My main office is in Manhattan. I have a secure apartment building in Tribeca, corporate housing for business associates. Top floor unit just came available. 3 bedrooms, full security, doorman whose former Secret Service. He met her eyes. You'd be close enough to work on the financial analysis in person. The boys could see each other. You'd have protection. You're offering me an apartment in Manhattan? I'm offering you a safe place to land. His voice was steady. 1 week, like we agreed. But you can't work effectively from a motel room 2 states away. This is practical, not charity. Amber wanted to refuse. Wanted to maintain the boundaries that kept her independent. But Theo was showing Tyler another sign, brother, and Tyler was copying it carefully, and both boys looked happier than she'd seen them in months. "What's the security like?" she asked finally. Former military. 24-hour monitoring. Panic buttons in every room. No one gets past the lobby without authorization. And Marcus couldn't find us there? Marcus couldn't breathe in that building without me knowing about it. Amber looked at Tyler, who was signing please, please, please over and over with the exaggerated desperation of an 8-year-old. She thought about the text message from last night, about running forever, about teaching her son that safety meant solitude. 1 week, she said firmly, and I'm paying rent.
Deal.
As they gathered their bags and headed toward the gates, Elias's head of security approached. "Sir, we have a problem. That man from last night? Hotel cameras caught his face before the mask went on. We ran it through our databases. And he's Corvus Strategic, one of their cleaners." Elias's expression darkened. So, Amber was right. They're connected. There's more. We flagged his known associates. 3 of them boarded flights to New York this morning. Amber's blood ran cold. They know where we're going. No, Elias said grimly. They're guessing. But it means we can't take commercial flights. Too exposed, he turned to his security chief. Ready the jet. File a flight plan to Teterboro. And double the security detail. As they diverted toward the private terminal, Theo and Tyler walked ahead, still signing to each other, oblivious to the danger. Amber felt Elias's hand briefly touch her shoulder. I won't let them hurt either of our sons. You can't promise that. No, he admitted. But I can promise I'll die trying to keep that promise. It should have sounded dramatic. Instead, it sounded like the truth. And that terrified her more than anything. The coffee shop near the private terminal was deserted except for one bored barista and a businessman typing frantically on his laptop. Elias had chosen the location deliberately, public enough to seem innocent, private enough for sensitive conversation. Amber sat across from him, Tyler and Theo at a nearby table with coloring books and hot chocolate, while Elias's security maintained watchful positions near the exits. He slid a tablet across to her. Everything you asked for. 6 months of statements, corporate filings, employee access logs, transaction histories. Amber stared at the device like it might explode. Once she looked, she was committed. Once she saw the pattern, she couldn't unsee it. It's encrypted, Elias added. Biometric lock. Only opens for your fingerprint. If anything happens to me, the files self-destruct in 72 hours. Cheerful thought. Realistic thought, his expression was grim. Whoever's doing this has already killed 2 of my financial officers. Made to look like accidents, car crash, home invasion. But I know assassination when I see it. Amber's hand hovered over the tablet. You didn't mention murders before. Would you have agreed to help if I had?
No.
Exactly, Elias leaned forward. I'm not a good man, Amber. But I'm trying to be a better one. And I need someone who can see the pattern before more people die. Amber pressed her thumb to the scanner. The screen flashed green and opened to a directory of files organized by date and account type. Her forensic training kicked in immediately. She started with the transaction logs, eyes scanning the columns of numbers, dates, routing codes. Within 3 minutes, she saw it. Cascade siphoning, she murmured. But more sophisticated than I initially thought. Each transfer triggers a secondary withdrawal from a different account, but they're spaced 72 hours apart to avoid automatic fraud detection. Can you trace where the money's going? Amber's fingers flew across the screen, opening subsidiary files, cross-referencing account numbers. Give me a minute. She pulled up the corporate filings next, shell company registrations, board member listings, business addresses. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in chemical solution. Meridian Holdings, she said. But they're not taking the money directly. They're routing it through. Wait, her stomach dropped. These shell companies. Triton Consulting.
Apex Stratégique Solutions.
Northbridge Capital Group. What about them? I've seen them before. Amber's voice shook slightly. 3 years ago, I consulted on a money laundering case, pro bono work, trying to get back into the legal world after I left Marcus. These same companies were flagged as suspicious entities, but the case collapsed when the key witness disappeared. Elias's jaw tightened. Disappeared how? Just
Gone.
never found. Amber kept scrolling, her unease growing. Marcus started working for Corvus Strategic around that same time. I thought it was coincidence. He'd been job hunting, said Corvus offered better pay. There are no coincidences in this world. Amber opened another file, a corporate ownership map showing the relationships between different entities. And there, buried 6 layers deep in the ownership structure, was a name that made her blood freeze. Marcus Chenoweth, Vice President of Financial Architecture. She stared at the screen, her mind racing through implications. He's not just working for Corvus. He's designing these shell companies. He's the architect building the structure they're using to drain your accounts. Which means he's known where I've been this whole time. Amber finished, her voice hollow. The threats, the texts, the man who broke into my hotel room. That wasn't about control or custody or an abusive ex tracking down his wife. That was about keeping me quiet. Elias reached across the table, his hand covering hers. What do you mean? I saw these companies 3 years ago. I flagged them as suspicious. And then Marcus convinced me to drop the consulting work, said it was too dangerous, that I needed to focus on Tyler. Her laugh was bitter. I thought he was being protective, but he was protecting his operation. You think he married you to monitor your work? The question hung in the air between them, terrible in its implications. Amber thought back to their courtship. How Marcus had pursued her so intensely after she'd testified in the Helix Tech case. How he'd asked detailed questions about her forensic methods. How he'd encouraged her to leave Morrison and Fitch and work independently, isolating her from colleagues who might have recognized warning signs. I think, she said carefully, that Marcus Chenoweth saw a brilliant forensic accountant who'd just made powerful enemies and decided she'd be more useful controlled than eliminated. Elias's expression darkened with understanding and rage. He weaponized your marriage. And when I finally left him, when I took Tyler and disappeared, he couldn't risk me resurfacing and recognizing his financial structures. Amber looked at her son, coloring peacefully beside Theo. That's why he's been hunting us. Not because he loves Tyler. Because I'm a threat to everything he's built. Then why not just... Elias stopped, unwilling to finish the sentence with children present. Kill me? Amber's voice was flat. Because my death would trigger investigations. I have safety deposits, documents, evidence, instructions to lawyers if anything happens to me. Marcus knows that. So instead, he's been trying to drive me underground permanently. Keep me running, keep me scared, keep me from ever looking at financial records that might expose him. She turned the tablet toward Elias, showing him the ownership map. But now I have looked, and I see exactly what he's doing. These shell companies aren't just draining your accounts, they're the financial backbone of Meridian's entire merger operation. Every family joining the alliance is moving their money through this structure. It's billions, Elias. Maybe tens of billions. Can you prove it? With time and access? Yes, Amber's analytical mind was already working through the evidence chain. But here's the problem. Marcus isn't working alone. Someone inside your organization is feeding him information. Someone with high-level access who knows which accounts to target, when you'll be vulnerable, how to bypass your security protocols. Elias pulled the tablet back, studying the files. You're saying I have a traitor. You have a partner. Someone who contacted Meridian, offered to deliver your empire from the inside, and brought Marcus in to handle the financial engineering. Amber met his eyes. And that person knew you were meeting with me. That's why the hotel room attack happened so quickly. They're watching you in real time.
Who?
Someone close enough to monitor your movements. Someone you trust. Amber pulled up the employee access logs, filtering for high-level clearances. These 6 people have the technical access to execute the transfers. but only 3 were in positions to know about our meeting at the airport. She highlighted 3 names on the screen. David Chun, chief accountant, with Elias for 12 years. Sarah Voss Martinez, Elias's cousin, VP of Operations. James Reeves, head of security, former FBI. Elias stared at the names like they were a death sentence. I've known David since college. Sarah is family. And James saved my life in Boston 3 years ago. One of them is betraying you. Before Elias could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went pale. What? Amber asked. David. He'd just sent an emergency alert. Someone's accessing the main accounts right now, transferring $8 million. He's trying to stop it, but the systems locked him out. Amber grabbed the tablet. When did the transfer start? 90 seconds ago. She pulled up the real-time transaction log, watching the money flow through a series of rapid transfers, each one bouncing through a different shell company, each one making the trail harder to follow. It's the same pattern, she said. Same 72-hour spacing compressed into minutes. They're desperate. Moving fast. Can you trace it? Amber's fingers flew across the screen, following the digital breadcrumbs through layers of corporate camouflage. It's going to. Wait, she stopped, staring at the final destination account. Elias, this money isn't going to Meridian. Where then? A private account. Cayman Islands. Registered to. She pulled up the ownership records and felt her heart stop. It's registered to James Reeves, Elias's head of security, the man currently standing 15 feet away, hand near his weapon, watching everyone in the coffee shop. The man who knew exactly where they were. Amber looked up slowly and found James staring directly at her, phone in his hand. He smiled. Then he pressed a button, and every exit door in the coffee shop slammed shut with electronic locks clicking into place. The coffee shop transformed from refuge to trap in seconds. James Reeves stepped forward, his hand now openly on his weapon. The other 2 security guards, men Elias had trusted for years, moved to flank him. I'm sorry, Elias, James said, his voice carrying genuine regret. You should have joined Meridian when you had the chance. Elias was already moving, positioning himself between James and the boys' table. How long? 18 months. They made me an offer after the Boston incident. Help deliver your empire or watch my daughter die from her cancer treatments. James's jaw tightened. They paid for her experimental therapy. Kept her alive. What would you have done? Not this, Elias's voice was ice. Amber had already grabbed Tyler and Theo, pulling them behind the coffee counter. The barista cowered beside them, hands shaking. The money's already moving, James continued. In 5 minutes, it'll be dispersed across 40 accounts in 12 countries. Untraceable. And Meridian takes over your operations by tomorrow morning. You killed David and Michael. Elias's tone made it a statement, not a question. They got too close to the truth. Just like Ms. Chenoweth here, James's eyes shifted to Amber. Marcus sends his regards, by the way. He's very eager to speak with you about custody arrangements. Amber's blood turned to ice. You're working with Marcus? We're all working together. One big, happy merger, James gestured to his men. Now, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Come with us quietly, and the boys don't see anything unpleasant. Elias's hand moved toward his jacket, slowly, carefully. Don't, James warned. I've got 3 guns tier 1, and there are civilians here, including your son. Amber's mind raced through options. The locked exits. The armed men. The boys behind her, terrified and vulnerable. They were outgunned and trapped. Then she remembered something from Elias's security briefing that morning. She pressed her emergency pendant, the one he'd insisted she wear, 3 times rapidly. Silent alarm. Help was coming. But would it arrive in time? Amber's been very helpful, James continued, moving closer. She found the pattern in 30 minutes that took us 6 months to build. Impressive. Marcus said she was brilliant. That's why you're coming with us. We need to know what else you figured out. I'm not going anywhere with you, Amber said firmly. Then the boys get hurt. Your choice. Tyler whimpered behind her. Theo's hands moved in frantic signs. Dad, I'm scared. Elias's expression went utterly cold, the dangerous calm of a man with nothing left to lose. James, if you touch either of those children, there is no place on earth you'll be safe. No amount of Meridian's money will hide you from what I'll do. Big words for a man with no empire left. That's when the first coffee cup flew. The barista, a young woman Amber hadn't paid much attention to, had grabbed a full pot of scalding coffee and hurled it directly at James's face. He screamed, hands flying up, weapon dropping. "Gio!" the barista shouted. "Back exit through the kitchen." Elias didn't hesitate. He grabbed his fallen gun, fired 2 shots into the electronic lock on the kitchen door, and kicked it open. "Amber, move." Amber scooped up both boys and ran. Behind her, she heard gunfire, sharp cracks that made Tyler scream and Theo bury his face in her shoulder. The kitchen was narrow, steel counters and industrial ovens creating a maze. Elias led them through to a delivery door, but as he pushed it open, a black SUV screeched to a halt directly in front of them. "Other way." Elias reversed direction, pulling them toward a hallway marked emergency exit. More gunfire behind them, James's voice shouting orders. "Don't let them reach the main terminal." They burst into a concrete stairwell, utilitarian and cold. Elias pointed up. "Parking structure. 3 levels. We can lose them in the cars." Amber's lungs burned as she climbed, Tyler's weight heavy in her arms. Theo kept pace beside his father, surprisingly fast for a child, his face set with determination. They emerged into the parking structure's 2nd level, dim lighting, rows of parked vehicles, the smell of oil and exhaust. Elias scanned the area, calculating. There, he pointed to a maintenance vehicle with keys dangling from the ignition. "Get in." Amber bundled both boys into the back seat as Elias started the engine. The vehicle lurched forward just as James and his men exploded from the stairwell entrance. Bullets sparked off concrete pillars as Elias wove between parked cars. He took a corner too fast, and Amber heard Tyler cry out as he was thrown against the door. "Hold on," Elias shouted. He aimed for the exit ramp, but another black SUV materialized, blocking their path. Elias threw the vehicle into reverse, tires screaming, and shot backward up the ramp to the next level. "How many men does James have?" Amber demanded.
He doesn't.
"These are Meridian's people. They've been waiting." "For what?" "For me to be vulnerable. For you to identify the pattern. For everything to collapse at once." Elias spun the wheel, taking them higher into the structure. They've been planning this for months. They reached the top level. Open air, rooftop, nowhere left to climb. Elias stopped the vehicle and looked around desperately. "Dead end," Amber said. "Not quite." Elias pointed across the gap between their parking structure and the adjacent terminal building. 20 feet of open air separated them from a connecting walkway. "Can you make that jump? With 2 children? Are you insane?" "They're not taking my son." Elias's voice was absolute. "And they're not taking yours either." Below them, multiple vehicles were ascending the ramps. They had maybe 2 minutes before being surrounded. Amber looked at the gap, then at Tyler's frightened face. Every maternal instinct screamed no. Then she saw the black SUV that had blocked their exit pulling up behind James's men. And stepping out of it, dressed in an expensive suit and wearing a smile that made her stomach turn, was Marcus Chenoweth. He waved at her, a casual, possessive gesture that said, "I've got you now."
"We jump," Amber said.
Elias nodded. He gathered Theo in his arms. "Trust me, son. Close your eyes." Amber held Tyler tight. "Remember when we played superheroes? We're flying now, baby. Just for a second." She didn't give herself time to think. She ran toward the edge, Elias beside her, and they leaped together into empty air. For one terrifying moment, there was nothing but wind and space and the sickening certainty they'd miscalculated. Then their feet hit the walkway on the other side. Amber stumbled, caught herself, kept Tyler from falling. Elias landed hard but kept his grip on Theo. They were across. Behind them, Marcus stood at the edge of the parking structure, watching them escape. He didn't look angry. He looked patient, like a man who knew the hunt was just beginning. Through here. Elias pulled open a maintenance door, and they plunged into the terminal building's service corridors, fluorescent lights, concrete walls, and the muffled sound of announcements echoing from the public spaces beyond. They ran until Amber's legs screamed for mercy, until Tyler was sobbing with exhaustion, until even Elias's military conditioning couldn't push them further. Finally, they collapsed in a junction of hallways, gasping for breath. "Your security," Amber panted. "The ones who were supposed to respond to my alarm." Either dead or compromised, Elias checked his phone. No response. James was my head of security. He controlled all the protocols. "So we're alone?" "Yes." Amber looked at the two frightened children, at the man who'd promised to protect them, at the maze of corridors that could lead anywhere. "We need to disappear," she said. "Really disappear. No phones, no credit cards, no electronic trail." Agreed. Elias pulled out his wallet and extracted a business card. "But first, we need someone we can trust. Someone outside my organization." He handed her the card. It read, "Detective Sarah Morrison, NYPD Major Crimes Unit." "She investigated my wife's death," Elias said quietly. "Never could prove I was the target, but she knew. She's honest, relentless, and she hates Meridian Holdings more than anyone I know." "Why?" "Because they killed her partner 2 years ago and made it look like suicide." Amber stared at the card. They'd gone from running from the law to running toward it. "Will she help us? If we can prove what we know." "She'll move heaven and earth." Elias stood, offering his hand. "But we need to get out of this airport alive first." Amber took his hand and let him pull her up. Behind them, footsteps echoed through the corridors. The hunt wasn't over.
It was just getting started.
The safe house wasn't in Manhattan. It wasn't in Tribeca with doormen and panic buttons. It was a fourth-floor walk-up in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, an anonymous building on a street full of bodega lights and multifamily homes where nobody asked questions and nobody remembered faces. Elias had called in his last favor, a former associate who'd gone legitimate, running a small import business and keeping a cash-purchase department for emergencies exactly like this. No deed in Elias's name. No paper trail. Just keys left under a flower pot and a promise never to ask why. "It's not much," Elias said, unlocking 3 separate deadbolts. The apartment smelled like old wood and radiator heat. "But it's invisible." Amber stepped inside, still holding Tyler's hand. The boy hadn't spoken since they'd fled the airport. Just clung to her with the silent terror of a child who'd watched his world become a war zone. The apartment was sparse but clean, 1 bedroom, a pull-out couch, a kitchenette with a humming refrigerator. Windows overlooking a fire escape and the sodium glow of streetlights. "Theo and I will take the couch," Elias said. "You and Tyler take the bedroom. We should take shifts. Keep watch." Agreed. Elias set down the duffel bag he'd grabbed from a storage locker during their escape. Cash, burner phones, fake IDs, and a handgun. The essentials of a man who'd always known he might need to disappear. But first, the boys need to eat. And you need to breathe. Amber realized she was shaking. The adrenaline of the past 6 hours was finally crashing, leaving her hollow and terrified. "They tried to kill us. In front of our children." "I know. Marcus saw us. He knows Tyler's with me. He'll use that. He'll claim I kidnapped him, that I'm unstable." Amber, Elias's hands gripped her shoulders, steady and warm. "We're alive. Both boys are safe. That's what matters right now." Tyler's small voice broke through. "Mom, I'm really hungry." The simple need, so normal, so mundane, pulled Amber back from the edge. "Okay, baby. Let me see what's here." The refrigerator held basic supplies: eggs, bread, cheese, milk. She made grilled cheese sandwiches while Elias coaxed Theo out of his shocked silence, the boy's hands moving in slow, trembling signs. Dad, are we going to die? Elias's response was firm, absolute.
No.
I promise. We're safe here. That man said he'd hurt us.
He lied.
No one will hurt you while I'm alive. Amber watched the exchange, understanding every sign. She saw the faith in Theo's eyes, complete, unquestioning trust that his father would protect him from anything.
Tyler used to look at her that way.
Before the running started. Before he learned that Mom's promises came with conditions and escape routes. They ate in silence, the boys gradually relaxing as food and safety restored their equilibrium. Tyler asked for seconds. Theo managed a small smile when Elias found a deck of cards and taught them a simple game. By 9 p.m., both boys were asleep, Tyler in the bedroom, Theo on cushions pulled from the couch, both still in their clothes, too exhausted even for pajamas. Amber stood at the window, watching the street below. A bodega was closing for the night. A couple argued in Spanish on the corner. Life, continuing normally while her world burned. Here, Elias handed her tea from the kitchenette. It's terrible, but it's hot. She took it, grateful for something to hold. Detective Morrison, you really think she'll help? I called from a payphone while you were making dinner. Didn't give details. Just said I had evidence about Meridian Holdings and needed to meet. Elias leaned against the wall beside her. She'll come. Tomorrow morning, neutral location. And, if it's a trap, then we run again, his voice held grim acceptance. But we're running out of options. James has my resources. Marcus has his connections. We have $3,000 cash and one gun. We have something else. Amber pulled out the tablet. She guarded it through the entire escape. We have proof. Transaction records. Corporate filings. Everything connecting Marcus to Meridian to your sabotage. Will it be enough? For an indictment? Maybe. For protective custody and witness protection? Definitely. Amber set down her tea and opened the tablet, pulling up files. But there's more here. I didn't have time to tell you at the coffee shop, but I found something else while you were watching the boys. She showed him a document, a merger agreement dated 3 weeks ago. Meridian isn't just taking over your operations, she explained. They're consolidating 5 criminal organizations into one corporate structure. Your shipping routes, the Delgado family's distribution networks, the Kozlov syndicate's enforcement, the Chun family's political connections, and Corvus Strategic's financial engineering. Elias studied the document, his expression darkening. A criminal monopoly.
Bigger.
It's organized crime going fully corporate. Legal protection, legitimate revenue streams, political influence. Once this merger completes, they'll be untouchable. When does it finalize? According to this, 3 days. There's a signing ceremony planned. All 5 heads of family, plus their financial architects, Amber's finger traced the signature line. Including Marcus Chenoweth. Location? Redacted. But there's a reference code here. She pulled up another file. Cross-referencing with property records. I think I can find it. Elias watched her work, fingers flying across the screen, opening and cross-referencing files with the focused intensity of someone in their element. This was what she'd been trained for, what she was brilliant at. There, she pulled up a property listing. Meridian owns a private estate in Cold Spring, Hudson Valley, 60 miles north. The property's registered under a shell company, but the tax records show a massive security upgrade 3 months ago. Helipad. Reinforced structures. This is where they're planning to sign. Heavily guarded? Absolutely. But Elias, she turned to face him. If we could get evidence from that signing, photographs, recordings, documents, it would be enough to bring down the entire organization. Not just your saboteurs. Everyone. We'd never get close. Maybe not. But Detective Morrison might. Amber's eyes held fierce determination. If we give her what we know, if we help her build a case, she could get warrants. Federal involvement. RICO charges against everyone in that room. Elias was quiet for a long moment, processing. You want to stop running and start fighting? I want my son to stop living in fear. I want Theo to have a father who doesn't spend every day looking over his shoulder. I want Marcus in prison where he can't hurt anyone else, her voice strengthened. And I want to burn down every structure that made me a victim. It's dangerous. Everything's dangerous. At least this way we choose the fight. Elias looked at his sleeping son, then back at Amber. If we do this, if we help Morrison build this case, there's no going back. We'll be witnesses. Our lives will be public record. People will know what I've done. Yes. Theo will know what his father really is. Theo already knows you're human, Amber said gently. He just needs to know you're trying to be better. From the makeshift bed, Theo's hands moved in his sleep, signing something repetitive. Safe. Family. Safe. Family. He signs that every night, Elias said quietly, since his mother died, like a prayer. Amber felt tears prick her eyes. Tyler does something similar. He counts things, windows, locks, exits, making sure we can always escape. We've both broken our children.
No.
We've kept them alive. Now we need to teach them how to live. Elias extended his hand. Partners? Amber shook it. Partners. Outside, a car slowed on the street below. Elias tensed, hand moving toward the gun on the counter. But the car continued past, just a rideshare dropping someone off. First watch is yours, Amber said. Wake me at 2 a.m. Agreed. As she moved toward the bedroom, Elias spoke again. Amber? Thank you. For what? For not running alone. For trusting me when you had every reason not to. His expression held complicated emotion. For making me believe I can still be someone worth saving. Amber thought about her first impression of Elias Voss. Dangerous, cold, exactly the kind of man she'd sworn to avoid. She'd been right about the danger, but wrong about everything else. Get some rest, she said. Tomorrow, we start fighting back. She left him standing watch at the window, a father protecting his son, a man trying to outrun his past, a partner she was learning to trust. Outside, the city hummed with indifferent life. But inside this small apartment, something new was taking root. Not safety, not yet. But hope. And sometimes that was enough to keep fighting. Detective Sarah Morrison met them at a Ukrainian diner on 2nd Avenue at 7 a.m. She was 50-something with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much disappointment to believe in easy answers. You have 5 minutes, she said, sliding into the booth across from Elias. Her gaze flicked to Amber. Who's she? Amber Chenoweth. Forensic accountant. Recognition sparked in Morrison's eyes. The Helix Tech case. You disappeared. I had reasons. Amber slid the tablet across the table. Now I have evidence. Morrison spent 4 minutes scrolling through files, her expression growing darker. When she looked up, the skepticism had been replaced by something sharper. This is Meridian's complete financial infrastructure. Shell companies, routing numbers, ownership chains. She focused on Elias. How did you get this? Someone's been systematically destroying my business. Ms. Chenoweth identified the pattern. And discover the merger, Amber added. 5 criminal organizations consolidating under corporate protection. The signing happens in 2 days at a private estate in Cold Spring. Morrison set down the tablet carefully. If this is accurate, if you're not playing me, this is the biggest RICO case in 20 years. It's accurate, Amber said. But there's a problem. My ex-husband Marcus Chenoweth is Corvus Strategics, financial architect. He's been hunting me for months to keep me from exposing this. And Elias's head of security was compromised. We're running out of time and allies. Where are your children now? Safe location, Elias said. With someone I trust. Morrison studied them both, calculating. You realize what you're asking? Full cooperation means testimony. Witness protection. Your lives turned inside out. We know. And you, Morrison pointed at Elias, have built your empire on exactly the kind of crimes you're now trying to prosecute. Why should I believe this isn't just you eliminating competition? Because James Reeves killed 2 of my people and tried to kill my son yesterday. Elias's voice was ice. Because Meridian wants me dead or absorbed, and I'd rather burn everything down than let them have it. Revenge isn't justice.
No.
But it's a start. Elias leaned forward. You want Meridian?
I'm handing them to you.
Every financial record, every shell company, every transaction. Amber can testify to the forensic evidence. I can testify to their operations. Together, we can give you everything. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call.
This is Morrison.
I need a tactical team and a federal prosecutor. Cold Spring Property, coordinates to follow. Probable RICO violations, organized crime merger. She paused, listening. Yes, I'm sure. I'll have documentation within the hour. She hung up and looked at Amber. I need you to compile everything on that tablet into a prosecutable format.
Can you do that? Yes.
But I need access to additional records, corporate filings that aren't on the tablet. There's a law office in Manhattan, Morrison and Fitch. I used to work there. They have databases I can access. Your old firm? Morrison frowned. That's risky. I still have login credentials. They never deactivated my account. Amber's expression was determined. And there's a senior partner there, Robert Chen, who owes me a favor. He'll give me access. Morrison considered. Okay. But I'm sending backup. 2 officers, plain clothes. You go in, get what you need, get out. 15 minutes maximum. Agreed. And you? Morrison turned to Elias. Stay here. You're too recognizable. If Meridian's watching the firm, they'll spot you instantly. Elias didn't like it, but he nodded. Be careful, he said to Amber. Morrison and Fitch occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in the financial district. Amber stood on the sidewalk outside, staring up at the building where she'd once been a rising star. You okay? One of Morrison's officers asked.
Fine.
Let's go. The lobby was unchanged, marble floors, expensive art, the quiet hum of money and power. Amber signed in as a guest, and the security guard barely glanced at her outdated bar association card. They took the elevator to the 23rd floor. The offices were already busy despite the early hour, associates hunched over computers, partners striding between conference rooms. Nobody recognized her. 3 years of absence had made her invisible. Robert Chen's office is in the corner, Amber told the officers. Wait here. This won't take long. She found Robert at his desk, reviewing contracts. He looked up, did a double take, and dropped his pen. Amber? What are you? I need a favor. Database access for corporate filings. 10 minutes. Robert's eyes widened. You can't just walk in here after 3 years. Marcus Chenoweth is laundering money for Meridian Holdings. I have proof, and I need additional documentation to make it prosecutable. She kept her voice low. You said if I ever needed help, you'd be there. I'm asking now. Robert stared at her, processing. He'd been her mentor once, had fought to make her partner, had written recommendation letters when other firms blacklisted her. Conference room 3. My login credentials, he scribbled them on a notepad. You have 10 minutes before I report my account compromise. Thank you. Amber practically ran to the conference room, logging into the firm's database. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up corporate filings for Corvus Strategic, cross-referencing with shell companies on Elias's tablet. She found what she needed in 8 minutes, documentation showing Marcus as the architect of record for 17 different shell corporations, all linked to known criminal enterprises. She was downloading the files to a secure drive when movement outside the conference room caught her eye. Marcus Chenoweth stood in the hallway, talking to one of the partners. Amber's blood froze. He wasn't supposed to be here. This was her old firm, not his. Then she saw the sign on the partner's office door, Marcus Chenoweth, Special Counsel, Financial Crimes Division. He'd taken a position at her firm, at Morrison and Fitch. He'd been waiting for her to come back. Marcus's had turned, and their eyes met through the glass wall. His expression shifted from surprise to cold satisfaction. He smiled and reached for his phone. Amber grabbed the drive and ran for the exit, but the elevator was too slow. She hit the stairwell instead, Morrison's officers right behind her. Building security just got an alert, one officer said, hand to his earpiece. They're locking down the exits. Fire stairs, Amber gasped, taking steps two at a time. There's an emergency exit on the loading dock level. They descended 23 floors at a sprint, Amber's lungs burning. Behind them, footsteps echoed, security guards or worse. They burst through the loading dock exit into an alley. A black SUV was already there, blocking their path. James Reeves stepped out, weapon drawn. Ms. Chenoweth, you've been very difficult to track down. The officers reached for their weapons, but 3 more men emerged from the SUV, all armed. Drop them, James ordered.
Now.
Morrison's officers hesitated, outgunned, no backup, caught in a narrow alley with civilians nearby. They dropped their weapons. James approached Amber, hand extended. The drive. And the tablet Elias gave you. I don't have the tablet. Then where is it? Somewhere you'll never find it. Amber's voice was steadier than her hands. And if anything happens to me, copies of everything go to the FBI, the SEC, and the New York Times. James laughed. You're bluffing. Try me. For a tense moment, nobody moved. Then James's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his expression changed. They're where? He looked at Amber with new understanding. The diner. Morrison set up surveillance. You recorded this entire meeting. Amber smiled. Every word. James's weapon came up, aimed directly at her chest. Then I guess we have nothing to lose. That's when the windows above them shattered, and Morrison's tactical team dropped into the alley on rappelling lines. NYP, drop your weapons. The next 30 seconds were chaos, shouting, weapons clattering to pavement, James and his men face down on the concrete. Morrison appeared at the alley entrance, weapon drawn, expression grimly satisfied. James Reeves, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and about 20 other charges I'm going to enjoy listing. Amber's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the loading dock steps, clutching the secured drive like a lifeline. One of Morrison's officers helped her up. Ma'am, are you hurt?
No.
She looked at James in handcuffs, at Marcus being led out of the building by more officers, at the evidence drive in her hand. Just tired of running. Morrison approached. Your ex-husband's claiming diplomatic immunity through Corvus Strategic. It won't hold, but he'll make noise. Let him. I have enough evidence to bury him and everyone he works with.
Good.
Because we're moving on that Cold Spring property tonight. Morrison's eyes were steel. Meridian's signing ceremony is tomorrow. We're going to crash it with federal warrants and SWAT teams. I want to be there. Absolutely not. You're a witness, not. I'm the only person who can identify all the financial architects on site, Amber interrupted. You need me there to confirm who's in that room. To testify about what documents they're signing. Morrison considered. You'd be in protective custody. Full tactical gear.
No unnecessary risks.
Agreed. And Elias. He stays with the children. This is my fight now. But as Morrison led her to an unmarked car, Amber knew she was lying. This was their fight. And tomorrow, it would finally end. The Cold Spring estate sat on 40 acres of wooded hillside, invisible from the road. Morrison's tactical team had surrounded the property at dawn, federal warrants in hand, waiting for the signing ceremony to begin. Amber wore a Kevlar vest under a borrowed jacket, crouched beside Morrison in a surveillance van half a mile from the main house. Screens showed feeds from hidden cameras positioned throughout the property. 6 vehicles arrived in the past hour, Morrison said, pointing to the display. We've identified 3 of the 5 family heads. The other 2 are inside already. What about Marcus? Arrived 30 minutes ago. Conference room on the 2nd floor. Morrison indicated a screen showing a long table surrounded by men in expensive suits. They're reviewing documents now. Amber studied the faces. She recognized Marcus immediately, still handsome, still radiating the confidence that had once attracted her. Beside him sat an older man she'd seen in Elias's files, Viktor Kozlov, enforcer for the Russian syndicate. There, She pointed to a silver-haired man at the head of a table. That's Richard Dalton. He's Meridian's CEO. Former hedge fund manager, moved into private equity 10 years ago. Private equity meaning organized crime? Meaning he's the one who organized the crime? Amber zoomed in on the documents. Those are the merger agreements. Once all 5 heads sign, the consolidation is legally binding. Shell companies become legitimate subsidiaries. Criminal enterprises become corporate divisions. Morrison's jaw tightened. How long until they sign? Based on the document stack, maybe 20 minutes. They're doing final reviews. Then we move now, Morrison spoke into her radio. All teams, we have probable cause. Signing ceremony in progress. Execute entry on my mark. Amber watched the screens as tactical teams moved into position, black-clad figures emerging from the tree line, approaching the house from multiple angles. Then another screen caught her attention. Morrison, look. The helipad. A helicopter was landing on the rooftop pad. 2 men emerged. One was James Reeves, somehow released from custody. The other was a face Amber didn't recognize. How is James here? Amber demanded. You arrested him yesterday. Morrison's expression went dark. Someone posted his bail. $1 million cash, she spoke into her radio. Command, we have a new player on the roof. Repeat, unknown individual arriving by helicopter. The response crackled back. Federal prosecutor says we still have green light. All subjects present now constitutes full conspiracy. Morrison looked at Amber. You stay in this van. Understood? No matter what happens. Understood. Morrison exited, and Amber was alone with the screens and one nervous tech operator. She watched the tactical teams breach the house, doors splintering, flashbangs detonating, shouted commands. The conference room erupted in chaos as federal agents swarmed in. But Marcus wasn't there. Amber's eyes frantically scanned the other camera feeds. Where had he?
There.
A stairwell camera caught Marcus and James heading upward, toward the roof. They were running. They're going for the helicopter, Amber said to the tech operator. Tell Morrison. She's already inside. Radios jammed. Amber stared at the screen showing the rooftop. The helicopter's rotors were spinning up. In 90 seconds, it would lift off with Marcus aboard, escaping to some country without extradition. She thought about Tyler, safe with Elias at the Brooklyn apartment. She thought about 3 years of running, of fear, of teaching her son that the world was dangerous and trust was impossible. She thought about Marcus getting away with everything. Give me your radio, she told the tech operator. Ma'am, I can't.
Now.
He handed it over. Amber burst from the van and ran toward the house. She could hear gunfire, shouting, the controlled chaos of the raid. She bypassed the main entrance and found a service door, unlocked, unguarded. Inside, the house was a maze of hallways and expensive artwork. She followed the sound of rotors, found a service stairwell, and climbed. Her legs burned. Her lungs screamed. But she kept moving. The rooftop access door was locked. Amber kicked it once, twice. The third kick splintered the frame. She emerged onto the helipad as Marcus was boarding the helicopter. James stood guard beside it, weapon drawn. The unknown man was already inside, shouting at the pilot. Marcus. Amber's voice cut through the rotor noise. He turned, and his expression shifted from surprise to something uglier. Amber, you should have stayed hidden. You murdered people, destroyed lives, stole billions. She moved closer, pulling the secure drive from her pocket. And I have proof of all of it. That drive means nothing. We have lawyers, judges, politicians in our pocket. You're a single witness with a history of mental instability. Marcus smiled, the same smile he'd used when he was charming, before the mask slipped. Who do you think they'll believe? Everyone. Because this isn't just financial records. Amber held up the drive. It's recordings. Every conversation you've had for the past 6 months, courtesy of the microphone in your office. The office at Morrison & Fitch, where I planted a bug 3 years ago before I left. Marcus's face drained of color. You're lying. Am I? Wanna bet your freedom on it? Amber's voice was steel. I heard everything, Marcus. Every plan. Every murder you ordered. Every threat you made. And now the FBI has copies. James raised his weapon. Give me the drive. Shoot me and 50 copies get released automatically. Amber stood her ground. I learned from the best. You taught me to always have insurance, Marcus. Remember? The helicopter pilot was shouting about weight limits and takeoff clearance. The unknown man leaned out. We're leaving.
Now.
With or without her. Marcus looked at Amber, at James, at the door behind her where tactical team footsteps were thundering closer. Take her, Marcus told James. James grabbed Amber's arm, dragging her toward the helicopter. She fought, but he was stronger, trained. Then the rooftop door exploded open, and Elias Voss emerged, weapon raised. Let her go, his voice was absolutely calm. Voss. James's grip loosened in surprise. You're supposed to be in Brooklyn. I don't leave my partners behind. Elias's aim never wavered. And I don't let people hurt the woman who saved my son. Marcus's eyes narrowed. How touching. The criminal with a conscience. Better than a predator with a law degree, Elias took a step closer. You used her brilliance. Manipulated her trauma. Weaponized her love for her son. You're worse than any criminal I've ever worked with. Noble words from a man whose empire is built on violence. My empire's gone. Your conspiracy's broken. We're both finished. Elias's expression was cold. Difference is, I'm choosing how my story ends. Morrison and her team burst onto the roof, weapons drawn, surrounding the helicopter. Nobody moves, Morrison shouted. The helicopter's engine whined louder. The pilot was preparing for emergency takeoff. James shoved Amber toward Elias and dove for the helicopter. Marcus was already pulling himself aboard. Morrison's team opened fire, but the helicopter was lifting off, awkwardly, dangerously, overloaded with 3 passengers. Elias grabbed Amber, pulling her away from the downdraft. The helicopter rose 10 feet, 20, rotors screaming. Then something mechanical shrieked, the engine, overtaxed and poorly maintained. Black smoke poured from the exhaust. The pilot tried to correct, but the helicopter tilted sickeningly. They're going down, someone shouted. The helicopter spun, rotors clipping the building's edge. Metal screamed. Then it dropped like a stone into the forested hillside beyond the property line. The explosion was deafening. Morrison was already radioing for emergency response, but Amber knew the truth. She'd seen enough action movies to recognize reality. Nobody walked away from that crash. Marcus was gone. She should have felt triumph, relief, justice. Instead, she felt empty. Elias's hand found hers. Are you hurt?
No.
She looked at the smoke rising from the trees. He was Tyler's father. He was a monster who happened to share DNA with your son. Elias's voice was gentle. Tyler will grieve the father he deserved, not the man Marcus actually was. Morrison approached, her expression grim. We need your statements. Both of you. And Miss Chenoweth, we recovered Marcus's phone from the helicopter wreckage. It survived, encrypted. Can you unlock it? Amber thought about the password Marcus had used for everything, Tyler's birthday, because even monsters could be sentimental.
Yes.
I can unlock it.
Good.
Because the men we arrested downstairs are already calling lawyers. We need every piece of evidence to make this stick. You'll have it. Amber looked at Elias. Where are the boys? Safe. With Detective Morrison's sister, retired FBI, Lev's in Westchester. They're making pancakes and watching cartoons. Despite everything, Amber smiled. Tyler hates pancakes. Theo's teaching him to give them another chance. Elias's expression softened. They're okay, Amber. Both of them. And after today, they'll be safer than they've ever been. As Morrison led them off the roof, past federal agents processing the scene, past arrested conspirators being loaded into vehicles, Amber felt the weight of 3 years finally lifting. Marcus was gone. Meridian was broken. The evidence was secured. She'd stopped running. Now she could finally figure out how to stand still. For months later, Riverside Park sparkled under morning sunlight. The Hudson River flowed past joggers and dogwalkers, carrying the last traces of winter toward the sea. Amber sat on a bench, coffee warming her hands, watching Tyler and Theo race toward the playground. The boys had grown close over the past months, brothers in everything but blood. "They're getting fast," Elias said, settling beside her with his own coffee. "Theo's been practicing running so he can keep up with Tyler. Tyler's been practicing sign language so they can argue properly," Amber smiled. Yesterday they had a 15-minute debate about whether Superman could beat Iron Man.
All Nazl.
Who won?
Theo, Obioli.
Tyler's signs get sloppy when he's passionate. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the boys climb the jungle gym. Theo reached the top first and signed triumphantly, "I win." Tyler signed back, "Only because I let you." "Liar." "Prove it." Both boys dissolved into silent laughter. "Morrison called this morning," Elias said. "The Meridian trials start next month. 18 defendants, including Richard Dalton and Victor Kozlov. Federal prosecutors are calling it the biggest RICO case in 30 years. Will we have to testify? Extensively. But Morrison says with the evidence we provided, the financial records, Marcus's recordings, the signed merger documents, convictions are almost guaranteed." Amber nodded. She'd spent the past 4 months working with federal prosecutors, explaining shell company structures and money laundering techniques to juries who could barely balance checkbooks. It was exhausting and necessary. "What about James?" she asked. "Cooperating fully. He gave up everyone from Meridian's financial network to their political connections. In exchange, he's getting 20 years instead of life." Elias's voice was neutral. "His daughter's cancer is in remission. He'll live long enough to see her graduate college. Do you forgive him?"
No.
"But I understand him." Elias watched Theo sign something elaborate to Tyler. "We both made choices to protect our children. His were just worse than mine." A jogger passed, and Elias's posture tensed reflexively before relaxing again. Old habits died hard. He'd spent 5 years looking over his shoulder, and 4 months of relative safety hadn't erased the instinct. "The therapist says it'll take time," Amber said gently. "Learning to feel safe. Is that what your therapist says too?" "Among other things," Amber smiled wryly. She'd started therapy 2 months ago, court-mandated as part of the custody arrangement, but helpful nonetheless. Turns out running for 18 months left psychological scars. "Apparently I have hypervigilance and trust issues. Who knew?" "Anyone who met you." Elias's tone was teasing but warm. Tyler ran over, signing rapidly. "Mom, can we get ice cream? Please, please, please." It's 10 in the morning. But it's Saturday. And Theo's never had the mint chocolate chip from that place. "Theo's never had mint chocolate chip, period," Elias added. "I've been a delinquent father in the ice cream department." Amber looked at their hopeful faces. 8-year-old boys who'd been through more trauma than most adults, still finding joy in simple things like ice cream and playgrounds.
Fine.
But vegetables at lunch. Both boys cheered and ran toward the park exit, signing excitedly about flavor combinations. As Elias and Amber followed, she noticed how different he looked now. Less guarded. The expensive suits replaced with jeans and casual shirts. The security detail reduced to one discreet bodyguard who stayed half a block away. "How's the legitimate business treating you?" she asked. "Surprisingly boring," Elias smiled. "Shipping containers and customs paperwork.
No territorial disputas.
No midnight calls about missing shipments. I almost miss the excitement." "Liar." "Okay, I don't miss it at all." His expression grew serious. "I liquidated everything, the syndicate, the offshore accounts, the special investments. Kept only the legal shipping business and my daughter's trust fund." "Daughter?" Amber stopped walking. Elias looked uncomfortable. "I haven't mentioned. Theo has an older sister, Sophia. She's 19, studying at Cambridge. Her mother and I weren't married when she was born. I sent her away when things got dangerous. Boarding schools, European universities kept her completely separate from my business. Does Theo know about her?
Yes.
They video chat every week. She's planning to visit this summer. He met Amber's eyes. I wanted to tell you earlier, but it never seemed like the right moment. When's the right moment to mention you have a daughter in England? Probably somewhere between my head of security tried to kill us and your ex-husband died in a helicopter crash. Elias's tone was self-deprecating. I'm still learning how to do this, the honesty thing, the partnership thing. Amber considered. Does she know about me? I told her I met someone. Someone brilliant and brave who saved both of our lives. Someone who's teaching me and Theo what family really means. His voice softened. She said she wants to meet you when she visits. That's terrifying. She's the least terrifying 19-year-old you'll ever meet. Wants to be a human rights lawyer. Volunteers at refugee centers. Makes me feel like maybe I did one thing right. They reached the ice cream shop, where Tyler and Theo had their faces pressed against the display case, debating flavors in animated sign language. The woman behind the counter smiled. Your sons. Amber and Elias exchanged glances. Yes, Amber said, because in every way that mattered, they were. Later, as the afternoon sun slanted golden through the trees, they returned to the park. The boys played while Amber and Elias sat on a blanket, watching them. Morrison offered me a consultant position, Amber said, teaching prosecutors forensic accounting techniques. It's part-time, flexible hours, good benefits. Are you taking it? I think so. It's not Morrison and Fitch, but she shrugged. Maybe I don't need the prestige anymore. Maybe I just need work that means something. You always did work that meant something. You just had to survive long enough to see it matter. Tyler and Theo were teaching each other cartwheels, Tyler demonstrating with athletic grace, while Theo's attempts ended in tumbles that made both boys laugh silently. They're happy, Elias observed. Really happy. When's the last time either of us could say that? Amber thought about the past 4 months. The testimony, the therapy, the slow, careful process of building something stable. It hadn't been easy. There were nightmares, setbacks, days when Tyler asked if they had to run again. But gradually, the fear had faded, replaced by routine, by school schedules and play dates, by the revolutionary concept of staying in one place. I bought an apartment, she said suddenly, in Brooklyn, near Prospect Park. 3 bedrooms, good school district. I close next month. Elias smiled. That's wonderful. It's terrifying. I've been running for so long, I forgot what staying feels like. You're not staying. You're building, he gestured toward the boys. Look at them. That's what we're building. Theo was teaching Tyler a new sign, something complex with both hands moving in synchronized patterns. What's he signing? Elias asked. Amber watched, her heart suddenly full. Family, she translated. He's teaching Tyler the sign for family. Tyler copied it carefully, then signed it back to Theo. Then both boys turned and signed it to their parents.
Family.
Elias's hand found Amber's, fingers intertwining. Is that what we are? I don't know what we are, Amber admitted. You're my former client, my partner, the man whose son is teaching mine what family means. We're figuring it out as we go. That sounds terrifying. Everything worthwhile is terrifying, she squeezed his hand. But I'm done letting fear make my decisions. So what do we do now? Amber looked at their sons, at the park, at the ordinary miracle of an afternoon with no threats and no running.
Now?
We stay. We build. We teach these boys that the world can be safe, she turned to face Elias. And maybe we figure out what comes next. Together. Together, Elias agreed. Theo ran over, signing frantically.
Dad.
Tyler says I can come to his new apartment when Mom moves.
Can I?
Please. Of course you can. Elias signed back. Anytime you want. And you too. Elias glanced at Amber, questioning. She smiled. The apartment has 3 bedrooms. One for Tyler, one for me, and one for guests who might need a place to stay. Or partners who might need a place to belong? Elias asked quietly. Maybe. Eventually. When we're both ready. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a promise of forever. But it was a beginning. And after everything they'd survived, after all the running and fear and violence, a beginning was enough. The boys raced back to the playground, Tyler's laughter mixing with Theo's silent joy. Amber and Elias watched them go, two broken people learning to be whole, two frightened parents learning to be brave, two survivors discovering what came after survival. The answer, it turned out, was simpler than either expected. What came after survival was life. Real, messy, beautiful life. And for the first time in years, they were ready to live it.